Yeshiva World. Hi, everybody. This is Peretz B. Eichler for Front and Center Talk, Yeshiva World News. Recently, the United States Presbyterian Church passed an edict, as it were, sanctions against Israel, and really a pro-Palestinian move to boycott Israel and companies that support Israel, major companies, major American companies, and they divested themselves of millions and millions of dollars as a way to kind of hurt Israel. Some people looking upon this as not only anti-Israel, but anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic as well. Many people within the Presbyterian Church themselves are very upset. One of them is Reverend Chris Leighton, who feels that this is a betrayal not only of the Jewish people, but of his very own church. We're going to be talking to him and hear a lot more about it. Doctor, I want to thank you very much for joining us here on Yeshiva World News. Thanks for taking the time, and thanks for your remarks. Have you gotten any flack for what you said?
Oh, well, certainly there are those that feel that I've not been as even-handed in representing the Palestinian cause, and to be sure, I'm keenly aware that there are injustices in Israel just as there are injustices in the United States that need to be honestly confronted. But the decision made by the General Assembly at the 221st meeting, it marks a very disturbing departure from its previous alignments and commitments. And while you can technically say that the decision was to divest from 3 corporations doing business, these are American corporations or international corporations, the fact is that divestment under even this guise needs to be framed within a larger BDS context.
BDS, just for those people who aren't aware, stands for Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions.
Correct.
A triple whammy. Interestingly enough, we would say in Hebrew the Rosh Tevis spells bads. Doesn't look like it's good for anybody.
Well, I don't, despite the inflated rhetoric of standing up in opposition to Israel's aggressive treatment of Palestinians or its alleged abuse. The fact is that I do not believe
Doctor, when you say
this is a movement that will be good for
Dr. Leighton,
Israelis, Palestinians, or Americans.
Dr. Leighton, when you say alleged abuse, I mean, would that include like treating a boss's wife and walking to an Israeli hospital and finding out how many of those patients that are being treated and cured are Palestinians? I mean, would anybody call that abuse?
Of course not. And, again, the fact is that the treatment of Israeli Palestinians, their equal rights are enshrined in law, and the challenge is making sure that the law is upheld and justly administered. But that the notions and the framing of Israel is almost consistently jaundiced and prejudiced, and it really needs to be far more honestly examined. Now that needs also to be put in the framework of legitimate concerns about Palestinian suffering in the West Bank, or it's called the occupied territories. There's important work that needs to be done in the area of civil rights. But the point is the Presbyterian Church has opted for a partisan take on this whole issue. And in doing that, in taking the side of and again, not all Palestinians, but by taking what I think is a more extreme position, it plays into the hands of extremists, and the consequence of that is that we've lost all credibility in establishing coalitions and partnerships with others that want to do good in the area, and that is indeed a disturbing alignment. You in fact were very prescient, because back in February you saw this coming down the pike, and now it came into reality some months later. Was anything done to try and prevent this to happen? To be sure, there were a lot of grassroots efforts that were meant to counter this, but the pro-divestment forces were very well organized, very well coordinated, and very well funded, I should add. And frankly, the side that is calling for balance, that it's calling for a more even-handed approach, and that does not want to get pulled into the zero-sum logic of having winners and losers. We're not as well organized as we needed to be, and frankly, every couple of years we seem to be rolling the rock up the same mountain and watching it fall back down again. It's enormously frustrating, and we've got to do a better job in the future of making sure that a young and dynamic group of Presbyterians knows the issues, is properly educated to see things from multiple perspectives, because right now we're losing that educational battle. That educational battle, I might just add, will not be successful if Presbyterians and other mainline Christians do not have the opportunity to engage Jews and learn why this issue, why Israel matters so profoundly and deeply within the Jewish community and within the Christian community as well, in terms of overcoming a long and disturbing legacy of anti-Judaism.
Dr. Leighton, it's interesting. You used an analogy, the rock going up the mountain and just falling back down. If I recall my Greek mythology, that had to do with the myth of Sisyphus, which was a desultory, purposeless action in which he just kept rolling the rock up the mountain, thinking it was going to stay there, and just rolled back down. And it was just an ongoing type of thing, which was a lesson in self-fulfilling prophecy of self-defeat. But that concept of a myth really exists here in thinking that by divesting from Israel and that supporting the Palestinians is somehow going to bring anything to any type of peaceful resolution. You said it was very dispiriting. Well, what things were dispiriting to you as a member of the church?
Well, look, the fact is that the church's decisions at the 221st General Assembly amount to a contradictory, I think, incoherent, inept, and disingenuous approach.
Incoherent, disingenuous,
inept, and disingenuous.
Aside from that, was it okay?
Well, other than that, it was great. But here's why it was disingenuous. On the one hand, the General Assembly tried to dissociate the divestment from these companies with the larger BDS movement. So its action that it claims does not indicate an alignment with the overall global boycott, divestment, and sanctions movements, but in point of fact, it does. So that attempt to distance itself from the larger BDS movement is just it's supercilious. It's quite frankly ridiculous.
Supercilious. I wonder if the word supercilious has anything to do with the word silly, but it's certainly.
Well, let's just go with silly, naive. But you can see it's profoundly contradictory. The second thing is that the General Assembly affirmed the approach that we know as the two-state solution. So it wants to insist that this is a commitment that has been a long-standing view within the church, but then it sets up a commission that calls for a study of the two-state solution and whether or not it's viable. So at the same time that it's affirming the two-state solution, it's setting up a commission that will, in large measure, be stacked by pro-Palestinian folk who will assess whether or not a two-state solution is worthy of backing in the future.
Yeah, that's kind of
what
like
it gives with one hand, it takes away with the other. And then to cap it all off, it says that the Zionism Unsettled, which is that anti-Zionist screed, which is loaded with all kinds of problematic, I think virulently troublesome material. It says that it does not represent the views of the Presbyterian Church, but the Presbyterian website will continue to market and sell it. So how can you speak out of two sides of your mouth and render a coherent position.
Kind of like what the tobacco industry does with saying, don't smoke these cigarettes, but on the other hand, they're pushing them that kids should go and buy the cigarettes. It's like saying, don't smoke, but hey, how'd you like a free pack of cigarettes?
Well, I don't know if it's that egregious, but it's certainly a disturbing and I think inherently contradictory position to hold.
Especially, I mean, things, Doctor, when they say things like they're interested in corporate social responsibility initiatives, and this is something that the church has said they were interested in doing, socially responsible initiatives, and I think they put in a significant amount of money, millions of dollars, into one of the Palestinian banks, and saying that one of the requisites was that 5% of it would go to corporate social responsibility initiatives. And then it was discovered that some of those quote-unquote social responsibility initiatives were actually given to Hamas. I mean, contradictory is putting it mildly, wouldn't you say?
Well, these things really have to be carefully monitored. And I think what we see is that good intentions and lofty rhetoric simply aren't enough.
Well, not only that,
there has to be a
Reverend,
knowledge base, and frankly, there needs to be leadership in the Presbyterian Church.
Doctor, you mentioned, Dr. Leighton, you said that the good intentions are enough. You and I both know that it's a religious axiom which crosses the boundaries of every religion. We all believe that God runs the world, but we also know that the road to where is paved with good intentions.
Absolutely correct. So there's really important work that needs to be done in preparation for the next General Assembly. And
when is that?
I think that a shift is not going to occur unless the national leadership in Louisville is willing to reckon with the failures of this most recent meeting of the General Assembly.
Do you feel that you're in the minority here? It was only a vote of 7, which is a very narrow margin. Is there any chance that they're going to overturn this? Is there an appeals process, or are you a lone voice in this?
I don't think I am a lone voice. In fact, I know that there are other articulate and committed individuals that really do want to make sure that the story is told in a way that honestly confronts failings on all sides, and that at the same time not only tries to punish Israel or tries to coerce Israel into changing policies, but instead actively pursues positive approaches, and it really concentrates its efforts on positive investment and far more exposure to the reality on the ground, both in Israel and in Palestine.
Well, it's interesting. I hear what you're saying, and again, I want to commend you on your brave stand. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King once said that one religion really is kind of something which has to be implemented in the spirit of brotherhood, and it should be manifest in social ethics. He also said that people should not, Christians specifically, should not think that being anti-Israel is not the very same thing as being anti-Jewish. And I would just ask you, do you feel that the idea of social ethics manifested through the way we behave toward each other is taking a very serious turn here by what your group has done? And do you feel that social ethics can be changed through voices like yourself? Do you think they're going to listen, is what I'm saying?
I certainly hope so, and the fact is that if I didn't have faith in the capacity for self-criticism, and then I think I would throw in the towel. But the fact is that this is going to be a long haul. There's a learning curve that will be steep and difficult to climb. Yet the fact is, I think we made the wrong decision. The General Assembly made a big blunder, and the fact is that in the days and months to come, we will see what fruit divestment bears. And I suspect that the shortcomings of this policy will emerge, will come to light, and as a result, it's my hope and prayer that we shift course. And at the same time, we have some really hard work to do. What makes it very difficult is to use the language of anti-Judaism and anti-Semitism, which animates, I think, a fair amount of what is going on, and then to, I think, in a very naive way, say that we Presbyterians, we continue to love our Jewish neighbors. There's something suspect about the failure of our church leadership to acknowledge how deeply embedded the patterns of anti-Judaism are within our tradition, and the imperative to own up to them and see how they continue to manifest themselves in a variety of ways, not least of which is in terms of its anti-Zionist approach.
Dr. Leighton, I want to thank you. Do you have any words that you'd like to say to the observant Jewish community on behalf of yourself and behalf of what you feel that the members of your group would really like to say? Any words that you'd like to leave us with?
Well, I don't think that this is a shift, that the shift that's required of the Presbyterian Church and among mainline Protestants in general, I do not think that we can stand adequately in solidarity with both Israel's and Palestinians without having Jews at the table. And the education that is desperately needed requires us to open ourselves to encountering one another, and therefore isolationism, as Abraham Joshua said, is no longer an option in this day and age.
Yep, you can say that again. Dr. Chris Leighton from Baltimore, thank you very much for your brave words, for your outspoken position, and we hope to be in touch again soon and hope that there will be a paradigm shift for the sake of everybody.
Terrence, thank you so much for inviting me to speak.
All right, be well. Dr. Chris Leighton for you here right on Yeshiva World News. This is Peretz Baruch Eichler.
Yeshiva World.